In some absolutely massive news, former AEW World Champion Kenny Omega will make his AEW return in precisely 1 week as he comes back to AEW TV for the first time ever since he began dealing with diverticulitis. We're going to tell you everything we know about this situation, what we could see Omega doing, how soon could Kenny Omega be back in a wrestling ring doing what he knows and does best. We're going to talk about it. Also, we're going to update you all on some news out of WWE, a major talent dealing with an undisclosed injury. We're going to tell you who that is, what's going on there, and what the playing field looks like for them and the stories that they are currently in. All that and much more coming up in this video. I'm Omer Q for Real Take Wrestling. Be sure to smash that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Okay. Let's talk about Kenny Omega. So, arguably one of, if not the best wrestler in the world, Kenny Omega has not been seen on AEW TV ever since he began dealing with bouts of diverticulitis. We all remember there was a show back at the latter end of 2023 where Omega was cutting a promo in the ring with Jericho, and he was visibly very distraught. He did not seem to have the same energy and the same vitality that we are used to seeing Kenny Omega have in the ring. And reports trickled out shortly thereafter that Omega was rushed to the hospital as soon as he got to the back, that he was complaining about pain in his abdomen. And it was later revealed that that pain and the source of his ailment was diverticulitis. You may remember a while back, there were a lot of discussions about Brock Lesnar when he was dealing with bouts of diverticulitis in his time in UFC, and he ended up having to get a large amount of his intestines actually removed, which is an insane thing to happen to anyone. But the reports back then said that had Kenny Omega not seek medical treatment when he did, things could have been far worse for him. And one thing that we all can agree on, I don't care whether you're an AEW fan or not, one thing we'd all agree on is that we are glad that Kenny Omega is not only, in good spirits, but honestly, quite frankly, the fact that he is still with us. And I'm just very thankful for that. I think we all should be, because if we're being honest, there is probably not a nicer guy in the wrestling business than Kenny Omega. But if we want to take a look at the news of his return, well, let's do that. So it was announced via Twitter, actually, via the arena that they're going to be running next week in Winnipeg. So here it is. Kenny Omega's return was announced by the Canada Life Center, Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. Here's the tweet. Winnipeg, we have a secret. We will be seeing Kenny Omega at AEW in Winnipeg on May 1st. Get your tickets now at link. So, obviously, we were hearing rumblings. Tony Khan was asked about Kenny Omega recently on, I believe, a podcast. And, the answer he gave was relatively what you would expect Tony to give, which is that, we are just glad that Kenny is okay. But, he's progressing, and we're obviously monitoring the situation. He did not promise that Kenny Omega was going to return in the ring, and I think that's the main thing here. The fact that they are running Winnipeg, I think it's a no-brainer that if Kenny Omega is able to travel, if he is able to be in the arena, then you have him there, and you have him, I think, not only uplift the spirits of the people in Winnipeg, go out and see his hometown crowd, but also I think that's a way of uplifting Kenny Omega. And not that, he needs it necessarily. He's obviously in good spirits. He's doing his Twitch stream. He's talking about wrestling. He's getting the entire wrestling world up in arms every week whenever he opens his mouth, but in a very positive way, in my view. I think that, it's a no-brainer to have him there. I think it makes sense to have him come out there, cut a promo, maybe allude to something way down the line whenever he hopefully is ready to come back. But nothing more than that. I would not expect to see Kenny Omega wrestle. I would not expect to see him get physical. If he does, that would be a major shock to, I think, most people who have followed this situation. I think it's more likely that we see something over the next few months develop with him as far as him actually returning to the ring. Because remember, it's not only Kenny returning to the ring, it would be him getting into ring shape, him training to get back in the ring. I think we know that he's still, dealing with effects of that diverticulitis, and he's still got some time to heal up and take care of his body in that way. So I don't think anyone's going to rush it. I know for a fact Tony Khan is not going to rush it. So it makes sense to have him come back in this way. And of course, whenever Kenny Omega's on your TV, whenever he's in his hometown of Winnipeg, ticket sales going to go up. You're going to get a bit of a boost in ratings. That's always lovely to see. So shout out to Kenny Omega. Hopefully we do see him at some point in 2024, not only because he's one of the nicest people in professional wrestling, but because he is one of, if not the best wrestler in the world today. Speaking of wrestling, let's move on and talk about some unfortunate news out of WWE. Jimmy Uso is dealing with an injury, this according to Fightful.com. Here was a free post on FightfulSelect.com. It says, quote, some unfortunate news to emerge out of the WWE draft pool announcement. Fightful Select has learned that Jimmy Uso has been sidelined with an undisclosed injury. We weren't given details on how long he's out, but it was enough to keep him out of the WWE draft pool after being booted from the Bloodline. That is what we know so far. Again, courtesy of FightfulSelect.com. First of all, as we did with Kenny Omega, hopefully Jimmy Uso makes a full recovery. Hopefully he's okay. Again, it's an undisclosed injury, so we don't know necessarily how long he's going to be out. We don't know what the injury is. Hopefully, whatever it is, it's relatively minor. But it is interesting that, it kind of, in a way, kind of makes the Bloodline with Solo Sikoa thing makes a little bit more sense. I think the way they did it, was cool, and they kind of wrote him off TV, and now maybe this was the reason why. Maybe this really was why they wrote him off TV. And now that, he's gone, it elevates Solo Sikoa and allows him to be a little bit more prominently featured on the show. Obviously, it does the same with Tama Tonga. But I think for the Bloodline, I mean, you're obviously building up towards some sort of a variation of a Bloodline Civil War. In my view, and I've always stated this, the best thing that you could do if you're going into War Games, as Survivor Series, on one side, have the new Bloodline, have Tama Tonga. If you get Jacob Fatu, get Jacob Fatu, Tama Tonga, Solo Sikoa, and The Rock on one side. And on the other side, you have the four baby faces. Sami Zayn, because he was officially a member of the Bloodline. Jimmy, Jey Uso, who are reuniting to continue the story. And then the tribal chief himself, Roman Reigns. That would be a pay-per-view or a match that would not only headline a pay-per-view, but I think that would absolutely fill out whatever arena they're going to be in for Survivor Series. I think that is what I would be building up to. I think there is at least the thought of them building up to something of that ilk. It would be spectacular if they did, but it all hinges on, Jimmy Uso hopefully recovering in time for that match. And hopefully he does, but, I will say this. Him being off TV in a way, I think like the way they did it was probably the best they could do. And like I said, it elevated Solo Sikoa, but you always hate to see anyone, especially someone so talented and as talented as Jimmy Uso is, get injured. The interesting thing here is the way this was kind of found out was he wasn't part of the draft pool, and I assume that Fightful will ask some questions. Don't know this for sure, but I think it also I think adds a little bit more credence to the idea of fans paying a little bit more attention, who's in the draft pool, who's not, and I think that's pretty dope. And just looking at the draft real quick because it is a bit related to this. I think that WWE has a chance this year to really load up on the draft, and I love the fact that they're actually not only drafting the rosters but locking them in on May 8th, and that means no one goes on anyone else's show. That's been one of my biggest problems with the drafts, in the past. I hope that moving forward they are able to remain more consistent there, but I guess we'll see. Guys, let me know what you thought of this news in the comment section below. What do you think about Kenny Omega and his return being confirmed? What do you think about the unfortunate news of Jimmy Uso's injury? Shout out to both of them, by the way. But let me know in the comment section. Also, be sure to smash that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released. Until next time, be happy, be healthy, and as always, keep it real.